Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Hijacked. This is a semi-cooperative game set in the future in which a plane has been hijacked. We are all hostage negotiators and we are trying to deal with the hostage takers, trying to rescue the pilots and the passengers, and trying to keep the police from storming the plane, because if that happens, we all lose. But there's only one winner, hence the semi-cooperative nature of it. Let me go ahead and show you how the game works, give you a quick look at the moving parts. It's a fairly straightforward game. And then we'll come on back up and we'll tell you what we think of it. So here we're taking a look at the game already, a couple of rounds into the action. Let me go ahead and explain what is going on in the round. We're going to have over here the red player who's sitting by the red track and has the red dice. They are the start player. They are the next ones to take a go. Like I said, we've already gone around the table a couple of times. So we have a round overview here that explains what's going on. So the very first thing we do is the action phase. Then we do the police phase and then the end phase. Now the action phase is once per player. So action phase for blue, and action phase for yellow. There's a white track across the top, just off camera there. That player isn't playing. So a 3-player game, okay? And once we've all taken an action phase, then we do the police phase, in which the police move one step forward. If the police ever get all the way to the front there, they storm the plane, and nobody wins the game, all right? And then finally comes the end phase, in which we see if the game has ended. And the game ends when someone is able to rescue 3 passengers and 1 pilot. These are the pilots. These are the passengers up here. And then we're going to figure out the scores. You'll score points for those, but also for several other things on the table. So from the top of the round, red player is going to grab their 2 dice. They're going to roll these dice. Okay, I got a 3 and a 6. And then they're going to place these and take actions. There's a few different places you can go. Let's go ahead and run those down, all right? So you can go over here to this area where the yellow player had just taken a turn, actually, but they forgot to pull back their dice. You can go to this area and you can try to build up trust with the hijackers, okay? It requires 2 dice, one of them, 1, 2, 3, the other one, a 4, 5, or 6. If you do that, which I could do right now with these dice, then you grab the bag, you shake it up, and you start pulling cubes. Most of them are green. There's a few red ones. Every time you pull one of these, if it's green, you're going to put it on the next percentage up, bring up the trust, in this case, to 60%, and the player scores 1 point down here on their track. If you pull a red one, you are done pulling. If the very first one you pull is a red, you still get 1 point. But if it's the second or the third, you don't get a point for that. And it can only be done up to 3 times. So this is a way to build up trust. If you are the one who hits 100%, you get this token, which is worth 5 points. If this drops below 100 and someone else hits 100 again, they take it from you. And you need that in order to claim and rescue these passengers. So next up, let me talk about that. The passengers. On your turn, you can put out one of these dice on a card that has the matching number of pips, or any die on a face-up card. If you do so, if it's face up, you will simply claim or discard that. If you rescue them, you need the necessary things. So for example, one of these tokens right here, the medicine, which you must have in front of you. And I will point out that this one is wild. The purple one is wild. And then you need to have that much trust. If I do so, I'm going to go ahead and claim that card. And sets of these can be turned in to claim passengers and pilots. 2 matching colored cards or 3 matching colored cards, respectively. 2 for the passengers, 3 for the pilots. If you go to a face-down card, like this one, then you will, you put the die there, you will reveal that card. You will then reveal any neighboring cards just to flip them face up. You see more information on the plane. And then you have a choice to make. You can either rescue that person, like I just described, which in this case red would be able to do. They can give up food. There is at least 20%. Fantastic. They claim this person. Or if you cannot, then you discard it. And if you discard it, which you can always choose to do even if you could rescue them, you get 1 victory point. All right. Once that's done, we will replace this card with a face-down card. There's also the ability to reserve a card, by the way, by putting a die on it. but you can do both things on your turn. And reserving is really more of a move of, hey, no one take this, I want to claim that next turn. And if you do want to take it from me, well, you need to put a very high die there, okay? But again, that's the usual move, is taking one like this. So there you go. That's how claiming a character works, and you get sets for those, or you can chuck it for a victory point. You can go to this area down here and get these requirements. These are randomized tiles that go in these spots. You can go there with the matching number, get the matching type, okay, and they are in here. You can go over here and deal with the hijackers, which the red player and the blue player have already started to do. Their requirements are at the top. Every time you go there, you get a victory point, and then you tick up this counter. If you do that 4 times, so once you bring it all the way back around to that, you claim the tile. And this is going to give you some end game scoring. So this would go away. You're going to get some end game scoring, in this case 2 points, plus if you have all these necessary tokens, another 6 points. And then we put a new one out in that spot, okay? And then your token can go away from there. So if you're working on one, you should ideally continue working on that one. You may abandon that and go, okay, I'm going to start working on this hijacker instead. But then you lose any progress you made on that one, all right? And no one can interfere with you while you are on the line communicating with that character. So that's a location you can go to, and you can see it takes 2 dice to do that. You can go up here to this area with the drone, and you can, with any die, take one of these, and you'll roll an extra die next turn. There's 2 of these available for 3 or 4 players. So that will give you an extra die for next round. And then you can, lastly, go to this area up here that takes 2 dice, very much like building trust down here. But there's a requirement to go there. Every player at the table must have the same number of victory points while you go there. If you manage to do that, you are going to pull back the police here 2 steps. Every other player besides you gets 2 victory points, but if you're the one who does it, you will, let's say, blue does it. Red and yellow will get 2 points, but blue does move up here. This will be victory points at the end of the game. And then you get to take 2 of these tiles, keep one, and put the other one shuffled back into that stack. And it gives you a little bonus, a little manipulation bonus in the game. And again, you'll get victory points if you're the one who's doing this, all right? At the end of the game, though. So there you go. And that's a way you keep everyone from losing. But again, everybody has to have the same number of victory points, which is very, very difficult to do. Though there are a couple of ways in which you can manipulate that. You can spend these tokens. You can throw them back in to give yourself a victory point. Every time you take a passenger, you get 3. When you take a pilot, you get 5. And you don't have to do that right away. You can hang on to the cards and then choose when you do that. And you can also, if you claim these objectives, this is randomized, by the way, this right here. But as soon as you achieve one of these, you get the token. And that you can also choose to flip face down and score that 1 or 3 or 2 victory points whenever, in order to try to line everybody up and be able to take that action and pull the cops back, okay? So that's what's going on in the game. Of course, there's a lot of rolling dice and random, events are happening. You don't know who you're walking into when you flip over one of these. You are hoping you get the right amount of pips and this and that, trying to manipulate everything. You'll also see some bonuses on the track. And if you land on that spot, you're going to get that bonus without jumping over it, basically. If you're here and blue gives everybody else 2 points, you go from 2 right to 4. I jumped right over it, so I wouldn't have gotten it. So there you go. That's pretty much what's happening. Once the game is over, either everyone loses or somebody gets 3 and 2. At the end of that round, you're going to add up your victory points. Anything you haven't scored so far, plus your track, plus these characters, whatever they give you, any one of these you still haven't cashed in is still worth a point. Then you could do it in game or you could do it at the end. Whoever has this, that's worth 5, and whoever has the most points is going to be the winner of the game. All right, there you go. So that is Hijacked. First of all, let's get the semi-co-op thing out of the way. I know a lot of people don't like semi-co-op. I'm not a big fan of semi-co-op games. I think if I had to pick the best working one, it might be this one. And I think part of the reason for that, I have a fundamental kind of feeling that semi-cooperative games just don't work very well.
I think they work very group dependent. I
Right.
kind of put them in the same category as I do like social deduction or something where it's like very group dependent. Very depends on the players, the player style, the mood of the group, all those kind of things.
That's true, yeah. If you're in the mood for like, well, if I don't win, nobody wins. If you're in that headspace, you can wreck any semi-cooperative game. I think the theme is a big part of a semi-cooperative game. I think that theme matters. I think that theme does a lot of the heavy lifting in a game of that type. Mm-hmm. If in a semi-cooperative game, the setting and the trope is that if I don't win, maybe I should help the team because somebody else might win, but I die, then there's very little motivation there for me. Yeah. And I'm talking here about things like Dead of Winter. Okay? It's not about I didn't win, somebody else won, but I died in the process, and I should care to help them with my last gasp of life. I'm like, no, I'm dying. I have a very hard time getting motivated by that. The theme in this one, this idea that I'm a hostage negotiator, I'm trying to save people's lives on a plane. Mm-hmm. Again, and this is futuristic and all of that jazz, so it's a little more removed than perhaps it would be if it was a modern setting. So I'm trying to save these people. Mm-hmm. But if I don't save them, the thing I lose, and somebody else does and gets the glory, the thing I don't get is, the glory. That's what I don't get. What I don't get is the promotion at work, the personal satisfaction of having rescued hostages. Mm-hmm. It's not that, and I die if I lose.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I like that. I think for a semi-co-op, that theme works pretty well.
I think so as well. I think it does bring that balance, too, with this semi-co-op. Was interesting that you really have to balance it on making sure you don't get too far ahead, but also making sure you don't get too far behind. Like, as the player behind sometimes, I was incentivized to get extra points to match, but not pass, if that makes sense, And so it really was not just holding yourself back, but also strategizing when you got points as well. So if that makes sense, both ends of those had an incentive. And I thought that was a really interesting, or it worked really well in this.
Yeah,
it didn't just feel like holding down, if that makes sense.
The idea of, for you to pull back the police, you have to be at the same score, is really a little bit of a misnomer. You have to be at the same score on the board.
Correct, yes.
Right? You have to have the same location on the score track. There are a few things you don't score on the score track and don't have to score on the score track until you choose to do so. You could have the cards to rescue a passenger and not do it yet. You can sit on those. You can have one of the medals and not goals. Cash that in, So you can choose to hold back or sort of speed up and catch somebody and then trigger that, And that's really where the game is won and lost, is in those points that aren't on the track.
Right, and just that manipulation of the points is kind of how I view it. Right. That manipulation of them. I have all these tokens, which I know are either tokens to help me get the passengers, or they are points. Anytime you can do that. And so I like that little mitigation almost of your score in order to match on the board. Right.
Now, lest we sound like we're talking about all the strategery in this game's super random, okay?
Very random.
There's a lot of dice rolling. There have been plenty of turns in which you will roll some dice. You get a point for that. One die. You go to pull the trust. Bam, red cube. That's a point. And you go and bank another die. That's a point. That turn is 1 point.
Right.
And then I can go and do something that gets me 8.
Right.
It is wildly random. Not random, but swingy maybe,
right.
Lucky. And that can certainly happen. You know, there's going to be those swings of fortunes, you know.
And oftentimes in a row, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have 3 really bad turns in a row while you have 3 really good turns in a row.
Right.
You know.
The flip side of that is the game is very simple to play. You really are rolling a couple of dice and utilizing them in places that make sense. Mm-hmm. And the theme is fun, you know.
It is.
Going back to bad, the rule book is a nightmare. You know, and you can tell that this is not a rule book from someone whose first language is English, and I get that. It's tricky to write that well. This person, Christian Van Dyke here, has been very, very active online, answering questions, but there's still so much in here I am trying to claw through. The last thing I did was give it a go. I say give it a go very loosely here. I tried to understand how solo works. Mm-hmm. I bailed on that, okay? I couldn't do it. There are pages of questions as to how solo works online, and that's just too bad, because this is the kind of game that I feel like if I sat down with this gentleman and played face-to-face, I would have a very, very good time. I would understand everything. I would get his vision. It would make sense. I could take it from him and enjoy the game. You know what I mean?
Right. No, the rule book definitely feels like it was made and written from a place of passion, you know, but it didn't have that play testing behind. I mean, a very simple example of that is the hand limit being 5. And that's just a little like reminder bubble kind of thing in the rule book, a little on the side. But it doesn't say when that takes effect. That doesn't say is it as soon as you take 5 or at the end of your turn or something like that. But it's also a little side blurb. So it's not like in the rules anywhere. So it just doesn't really make sense to, one, you don't get all the information from the rule book, as well as it's really difficult to find any information in the rule book. And then you go online for clarifications, and again, you can just tell it's been translated. So it definitely has that passion behind it, but just hasn't been ironed out. It hasn't been tested in the languages being presented here, I don't feel like, and as well as blindly from the rule book specifically.
Yeah. There's certainly some barriers there that unfortunately are going to be there until there's a second edition, I think, you know?
And that's something I want to say. I mean, I think that this game is one of those that does scream for that second edition.
Yes.
Right? It definitely feels like, you know, one of my favorite games, for example, is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Mm-hmm. And I love that game. But it's one of those, like, if you would just fix it, you know, it's like the thematics are so strong and it's so fun, but yet there's just so many barriers in it, and sometimes it just feels a little broken.
I think Betrayal is a great comparison to this game in that it's a game a lot of people enjoy and like, but it's like a known kind of broken game.
Yeah.
You know, there's some issues with it. You can enjoy it despite that, though. Mm-hmm. And I think it's that sort of, you forgive its problems because the setting, the fun, the whatever is enjoyable. And I kind of put this in the same camp. There's issues, yes, they're obvious. I also have fun playing, like grabbing my 2 dice, chucking them, being like, ooh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to flip this character. Oh, no. It's the kind of game that I think would go over well for those people that enjoy Betrayal, people that aren't so hung up on mechanisms, you know?
Balance. It has to be perfectly balanced. It's not going to be. You're going to have madly wild, swingy turns sometime. You know?
Yeah, it's sort of all over the map. It comes together in a charming way, but don't go into this expecting a game that is tight. Don't go into it expecting anything but a game that is going to smack you around a little bit with its swings and luck, and you just have to go, oh man, look at what just happened. Who's next?
But again, I mean, you talk about the theme. Does that not fit the theme? I mean, if you're negotiating with not hostages, with
hostage taker, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. With hijackers, if you're negotiating them, you're going to feel a little roughed up. You're going to feel like, oh, that worked. You know, I mean, kind of that swingy nature to it. So again, is that kind of the forgiving of it? Is that theme is so fun, and it does kind of fit it. That it's like, at the end, you're like, whew. Wow, that was a lot. That was a wild ride. And it's a
little bit like Hostage Negotiator, the game. Solo game.
Oh, interesting it is.
Which you're also rolling dice like crazy, the swings of luck, and I mean, it's kind of crazy. People really like that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to go into it knowing, like, it's Yahtzee-esque.
It's going to be a ride.
I mean? It's going to be a ride. You get what you get. Yeah, my recommendation here, and I'll go ahead and go into my final thoughts, is that this might be a good one for folks that aren't hung up on mechanisms being clean, on balance, on a game being anything but like sort of a box to have some fun with and get some luck thrown in your eyes, and you'll go, oh, okay, whatever. Let's see what happens, okay? That's kind of what this is. Do I love that? No. Do I like it? Sometimes. And I enjoyed this game, but I wouldn't say it's great. For me, I'm going to squeak this one into a 6. Because, again, I'm having a hard time if somebody comes up to me and goes, you want to try it? Going, no, I don't want to try it. I'm enjoying my plays of it, honestly. I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's fun to roll the dice and see what happens, and sometimes the plane gets stormed and we all lose, and sometimes we pull off a miracle. You know what I mean? It works out sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. That's where I'm at. I'm also, there's house rules that have suggested themselves to me, to both of us actually, which is not a great indicator, you know what I mean, of a game being super solid. But I feel, I don't feel like going lower than a 6 on this one. 6 is not a good score, but I don't despise the game either. You know, I've definitely had fun with it.
Yeah, it's one of those, if somebody came up and was like, I want to play this, I don't know that I'd be like, no, thank you. You know, for that reason, I'm coming in a little bit higher, but very similar to 6.5.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I think that if I saw it on the shelf, I'd pull it off because aesthetically, it's an interesting theme. It has comfortable mechanisms. It's very simple dice placement. And I do like that. I like how in the mechanisms, it's pretty simple. You know, and you talked about earlier how it's probably going to catch a lot of flack or put a lot of people off because of the semi-co-op nature. But in my plays, what I did find was I actually liked that becoming part of the strategy. It kept you having to balance your different points, like you said, in your play area as opposed to on the board. And I also felt like you had to time when you were going to take that action. So not just the availability action, but you can kind of put it on the other player to take that action for you. Yes, you're giving them a point. Well, 2 points, but it's actually 1 because you get 1 back.
Yeah.
And
a bonus.
And a bonus. But those bonuses can be huge. So, you know, it might be that I want the points, or it might be that I want the actual bonus tiles. And so you can kind of play that to your advantage. You know, I know one play for specific, to be specific in one play, I was behind and I was like, but I want that bonus because I know that there's a really good bonus in there.
Yeah.
And
those are wild too. Those
are all over the map.
There's one that's amazing. There's one that's like so. Yeah, there's like 6 of those little tiles, and they are incongruous is the nicest way I can put it. They're not the same.
But you do get a choice of them, so you do get 2.
You get to look at 2,
so it's a little loose as well. So this is one that I think if you go in knowing that it's not broken, but that it has those flaws, that it's going to be really swingy.
Right.
But you can kind of plan around that and just go with it. The journey's a lot of fun. I agree. It's one that stays on my mind. It's one that I keep thinking of. And if somebody wanted to play it, I'd happily sit down. But because of these issues, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to somebody.
Yeah. And again, unless you are really good at just turning off your brain, turning off that part of you that is critical of like, oh, this mechanism doesn't seem balanced. Oh, this idea. Oh, there's a first player advantage. If you often find yourself thinking there's a first player advantage or disadvantage or anything gamery like that, avoid, okay? This isn't going to work out for you.
You're going to be incredibly frustrated.
Yeah, it's lucky. Anyway, all right, there you go. That is Hijacked, everybody. Thanks very much for checking this one out with us. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
Go rescue those passengers.